Hi, friends, and welcome to the Neighborhood Well. This is your host, Paul Gadola, on WEHC 90.7 Emory and Henry, your college and community radio station. Today in the studio, my special guest with me is Benjamin Walls. He's a fine art photographer with a gallery in downtown Bristol, and he's here today to tell us mostly about his new venture, which is called WALLSabout Travel. Benjamin, welcome to the Neighborhood Well.
It's great to be here, Paul. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure already. So why don't you start and just tell us a little bit about exactly who you are and a little bit about your background.
Gosh, how do I fit that in? I am very passionate about sharing the natural world with folks, and I do that primarily through my fine art photographs that you can see on display in downtown Bristol at my gallery. And I'm really jazzed about a new venture that I'm getting into called WALLSabout Travel, which also enables me to share the wonderful natural world we live in with folks by taking them on trips.
So one of the things that I've appreciated about Benjamin already here is in his little bio about himself is a results-oriented environmentalist and community advocate. So, of course, that plays right in with everything we talk about here on the Neighborhood Well. So, Benjamin, go ahead and tell us a little bit about your decision to launch WALLSabout Travel and what WALLSabout Travel is.
Well, I've been in the art business for quite some time. I've got some wonderful collectors and folks that support my vision of the wild. And, those folks over the years have come to me and said, hey, we would love for you to organize a trip and take us on a trip. And so I did that a couple of years ago. We set up an African safari, and WALLSabout Travel was born. So the name WALLSabout is a play on words. Of course, everybody knows the Aussie term walkabout. And so I wanted something that really, played on the whole travel philosophy there. And but yeah, that's how WALLSabout was born. I did our first trip as an African safari. It went really, really well. Our guests had a great time, and I really was, inspired by sharing people, showing folks their very first African lion or elephant. It was an amazing experience to be able to share that with folks in person. And so I thought, well, I need to grow this into a proper company, and so we've introduced new itineraries now to Cuba, to Australia, New Zealand, and of course we're going back to Africa. And those are our four fundamental trips right now. And that's what it's all about, is just sharing the natural world with folks.
So, Benjamin, you have extensive travel experience over the past 10 years. I think I read that you traveled over 1 million miles in that time. Tell us about, what are some of the experiences that contributed to your expertise now that is going to allow you to provide these great opportunities for folks?
Yeah, and that's kind of, how this grew. But my clients were asking me, they were coming to the gallery and asking me for travel tips, basically. Hey, I'm going to East Africa, or I'm going to these places. And I started to realize, through our conversations, how much experience I really did have in these locations and how unique my perspectives were. So, for example, in East Africa, I've hand-selected each one of the lodges that we go to based on a number of factors: the location, the proximity to the migration, of course, the luxury amenities that they have. And, the Great Migration migrates. So you don't want to be at the wrong lodge at the wrong time of year. There's just so many decisions that go into it. And I guess I just really came to realize that my experience in these different locations was a perfect base to curate trips for folks.
So where did it all start, Benjamin? So you've made your choice with Africa, Cuba, Australia, and New Zealand as what's taken off WALLSabout. But where did your travel experience start?
My very first international trip was actually to Australia. I studied there. I'm an Appalachian State University graduate. And when I was at App State, they had about 14,000 students and one study abroad, or exchange, I should say, an exchange position to Australia. And I busted my butt and worked hard and got that one position, and got to exchange with another student from Australia and spent my semester abroad. And it was a trip that changed my life. It blew my mind, the possibilities of travel. And here I was as a middle-class American, could afford the plane ticket to Australia and actually be able to travel around a little bit. I just, it just was such an influential trip for me. And that's where it started. And since then, I've been back to Australia, New Zealand a couple of times, and places all around the world in pursuit of my primary venture, which is photography, fine art photography. But that's where it started, was Australia.
So for those that have not had a chance to be down to your gallery, what would be some of your fine art that they would see? What are just some examples?
Well, I really focus on 4 distinct genres. So I work in landscape, black and white, wildlife, and abstract are the genres that I really focus on. And I really consider myself more of an artist with a camera than a photographer. So I try to create pieces that are designed for your home, your office, for a museum wall. And so just like any other artist, I think about things like scale. Scale is very important in my work. So I create very large pieces. And I think I create things in different mediums. So we've got things that are high gloss and or face-mounted acrylic, or enlarged on canvas. I do triptychs and quadriptychs, and just kind of mix it up. And it's all about creating a piece that people want to live with, or a piece that maybe challenges you or inspires you. And I think art has this unique ability to connect emotionally with folks, and that's how I've been connecting the natural world with people for 14 years now. And
absolutely, and that sounds like, so one of the things we always talk about here is that wellness, a super wellness or integrated wellness, is body, mind, heart, soul, spirit, or physical, mental, emotional. And so making that emotional connection, of course, is so important. And, places like Disney World do that really well. They draw you in and do that. So speaking of, of the various arts you've done, and wildlife is always a favorite topic, is there a particular wildlife species or a specific animal that you have missed yet, you haven't had the chance to photograph, or what your favorite is, period?
That list is endless, the one that I haven't photographed yet, because I feel like the more I travel, the more I want to travel. The more I see, the more I want to see, and I'm just so passionate about it. So I feel like I've just, scratched the surface, tip of the iceberg here. I've a favorite animal. Right now, I've got an image that I'm super proud of at the gallery. It's called Timbo Jaro. Timbo means elephant, and Jaro as in Kilimanjaro. It's a herd of elephants. And by the way, a herd of elephants is called a parade. And so it's a parade of elephants in front of Mount Kilimanjaro, and it's an image that I worked very hard to capture, and then it took me, over a 10-year period to be able to capture it. But so, working with the elephants right now is definitely a passion. There's a lot of issues out there right now with the ivory trade, and, a lot of, buzz going around with that. So, I think maybe that's why it's kind of in the front of my mind right now, but also just because there's a certain, there's just a certain independence and curiosity that the elephants have above and beyond the other animals in Africa. And I think that might be because they're not quite the bottom of the food chain and they don't have to stress too much about that kind of thing. But
right.
And I don't know, they're just such a wonderful animal to be around.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. That's just a piece that I think, myself, I'm interested, just curious how you're looking at it and what you like. We don't want to venture too far away from the WALLSabout travel. Can you tell us a little bit? You mentioned that the folks taking these trips on the itineraries, they'd have luxury amenities. What can they expect? What is that?
Yeah, well, there at the gallery in downtown Bristol, we have come, my team, myself, have really worked hard to meet the expectation of our clients. And I'm trying to carry that over into this new business, into WALLSabout, and meet the expectation. So the luxury really begins with the day that you book the trip, because we start taking care of all the details for you. We'll tell you what vaccinations you need, what visa requirements there are, what things to pack, how to prepare for the trip. All of that begins at your booking. And then when you go on the trip, you basically book the trip and go, and we take care of everything from there. So, someone greets you at the airport. I have hand-selected the guides that will be our in-country guides, and there's always a WALLSabout program director that is along with the trip. So you've got a U.S.-based, actually Bristol-based person that's going to be there, which is an amazing service to actually offer folks here in the Tri-Cities area. And then greeting you there at the airport as well as the WALLSabout guide, the in-country guides. And then the amenities are really nice. I mean, I've worked really hard to select the lodges that we stay at, for example, in Africa or any of the destinations, Australia, New Zealand, Cuba. Very nice places. Each one varies a little bit, but spa services are available. Nice pools are available at most. The food is very good. In Africa or in places that we're encountering wildlife, it's all about location because, that is an amenity, not to have to drive an extra 3 or 4 hours or whatever the crazy drive time may be, but to be able to just pop right out your door and be right in the heart of the action is important as well. So all of those things just kind of add up to the millions of decisions that become a trip and become an itinerary. And we worked really hard on those details.
So many folks have that dream of seeing wildlife and stuff, and it sounds like you guys are doing a great job of making it a little bit easier for people just to get right there. So what can people expect? How many folks can be on the trip? Is there a max amount, a minimum amount that you take?
Yeah. Each trip's a little bit different. Generally speaking, a minimum would be 6 and a maximum would be 12 to 15. It really depends on the trip because, for example, in East Africa, we max the vehicles out at 5 per, and these are incredible Toyota four-wheel drive vehicles that are designed for 8 to 9 passengers, and we just put 5 in them as a maximum, so there's plenty of room to move around. You're not going to be jammed in a little minibus or a two-wheel drive or any of that stuff. So, and then the other trips we've got, Cuba, we could put a few more folks on the trip. But, our African safari trips, the past 2, for example, have been 9 and 10 have been the numbers. So small groups, a lot of attention. We have, like I said, in-country guides that are giving you that attention, the WALLSabout program director. And I guess it is important to note, I'm so obsessed with making sure that this is just going off without a hitch and our trips are really started on the right foot, that I'm actually going on all the trips, all our 2017 and 2018 departures. I will be there personally to make sure that it goes right. So if you want to travel with me, now's the time. And after that, our quality will stay at that high level, but there will often be a WALLSabout program director and not myself personally because I am only one person. So.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to The Neighborhood Well. This is your host, Paul Gadola, on WEHC 90.7, your college and community radio station. Today in the studio with me is fine art photographer Benjamin Walls, and he is here telling us all about his WALLSabout travel program. Benjamin, you were just telling us about some of the amenities that people can experience and the size of the group within it. You're offering something getting started here because this is pretty much a brand new program, correct? And it's VIP introductory pricing this year. And, of course, one of the benefits of that, I know, is that you're going on the trip, you just said. But what else can you tell us about that?
Well, any new venture is an investment, and I feel very blessed to be able to start this new venture thanks to the success of my artwork. And I'm determined that it go really well. So like I said, I'm going to be on the trip. That's one step I'm taking. The other big step that I'm taking is for the first 6 participants of each trip, so the first 6 bookings of each trip, we're offering an introductory pricing rate. And that's because I want people on the trip. I know from the trips that have already come and gone that the best way for us to book our next trip is by the word of mouth of the folks that have just come off the previous trip. And I'm confident people are going to have an amazing experience and they're going to go and tell their friends and family, and that's just going to help us grow our business. So, I'm not saying that we'll do that in the future, but this first year with our full 4 trip itinerary, which specifically is Cuba, Australia, New Zealand, and Africa. And our 2018 itinerary, we're going to be offering that introductory pricing.
So a couple questions about that then. Is there specific dates that each one is happening already that you already know? And then with that then, is there any kind of age or activity level requirements for folks?
Right. Those are great questions. As far as the age requirement, absolutely not. We've got a family of 4 booked on one of our trips right now that has a 12 and a 13-year-old, so that works. We can also, I should say, with families or specific groups, we can do custom itineraries. So if you and your family wanted to go on an itinerary with no one else, no other part of the group, we can make that happen as well. We can do that with a corporate group or something like that, like a corporate team, marketing team or something like that with a specific corporation. And as going up with age, we've got folks in their late 60s and early 70s that have been on trips and had a wonderful time. And so you can kind of know the nuts and bolts of the travel. For example, we've got an itinerary to New Zealand right now that I'm really jazzed about, and we're going out to the Franz Josef Glacier, which is one of the world's lowest lying glaciers. And that day, we have a planned activity to do a short hike, non-strenuous hike around the terminal end of the glacier. But as an option, you could also do a glacier walk, so you strap on your crampons and go up and do that. And if you're really adventurous, you could actually get in a helicopter and go up to the top of the glacier and get in a crevasse. So we are able to tailor the trip for just about anybody's adventure needs and wants there. So, and then we also have alternatives. If you weren't interested in a particular activity one day, you could hit the spa instead. So there's just a million ways for us to really tailor and meet the needs of our clients. And each trip's a little bit different. Believe it or not, the African safari is one of the least impact trips from a physical activity requirement, because from the time you arrive at the airport to the time you leave, you never have to touch your bag. My guys take care of all of that. And then, you've got the safari vehicle to take you around. So you go to the airport from the airport front door to the safari vehicle, and really you're just a step away from the safari vehicle the entire time, and you don't have to worry too much about any kind of strenuous hiking or anything like that. So we feel like we've got an option for just about any fitness level or an age.
So I imagine there's like a prime season for each of these locations that you've picked it around, or how does that work out?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's part of those plethora of decisions that we make on our end. For example, you wouldn't want to go walking around in Havana in July. So let's keep that in January. And then Australia, New Zealand, I've picked the dates there because we're still in the better weather parts of the year. However, we're missing the Aussie summer holiday, which means that the occupancy rates at the hotels and accommodations will be just a touch lower in price, which we get to pass on to our customers. And, we don't hit the crowds, so we're not constantly dealing with crowds. We can have a better experience. Africa, believe it or not, in July, the coolest month of the year in East Africa, where we'll be located. So, a lot of times people hear, are you going to Africa in July? Are you crazy? Actually, it's the coolest month of the year. It's also the time of the year to be there to see the Great Migration cross the Mara River, which is one of the reasons we're going in July. And all of those little details definitely play into our decision-making process.
So is Africa the next one coming up in July, or is there something?
We have an Africa July 2017, which is right around the corner, and that trip was full. Okay. However, we did have a last-minute cancellation, so we have 2 spaces available. If anybody would like to get in on that trip, it's from July 17th through July 27th, and you can see details on our website at WALLSabout.com. We've even got some special pricing on those last 2 spots because of the way the last-minute cancellation came through. So it's a unique opportunity. If you're interested, give us a call.
And so what are the other dates? You mentioned Cuba in January.
Yeah, Cuba, January 12th through 21st will be the Cuba in January dates. Australia is in February, but gosh, my memory. February and March, but you can see February is Australia and March is New Zealand, but you can see those dates at wallsabout.com.
Right, absolutely. Thank you. So one of the things I'd be curious about is, some people with international travel, they get nervous. So that would obviously be a benefit of why to go with you. Mm-hmm. So what can you say about that?
Yeah, that's the thing. I've got a lot of experience overseas, and we make that part easy. You don't have to worry about, did I remember this? Did I remember to pack this? Did I remember the right visa? Am I doing this properly? We jump those hoops for you. Cuba, for example, right now, yes, you are legally allowed to travel to Cuba, but you have to do it in a very specific manner in order to do it legally. That country is just opening up to us right now. And my company's done the research, and we're taking you through the activities that does make it legal for you to travel to Cuba. All of the headache, basically, the stumbling blocks are out. And then the other thing that's really important, too, is the experience. So, for example, I've spent 1.5 years of my life in Australia, so culling all of those incredible places and experiences down to a 10 to 14-day itinerary was really difficult. But what I've done is worked and taken each experience down to a chopping block and said, hey, is this the best that Australia has to offer? Could we do it better? Or said, hey, do we need to be here in the AM or the PM? Or what about the restaurant opportunities here? Which lodge do we stay at? All of those fine details are definitely play.
So, Benjamin, can you tell us a little bit maybe about your personal highlights in any one of these, or all of them, however you want to do, in any one of these places?
All right, so we'll be here till tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
Oh, I mean, I just have such a passion for travel, for meeting new people, being in new cultures, and especially the landscape and the wildlife. And for me right now, particularly for me, it's sharing this with people on the trips. Australia, the very first time that I saw the Great Ocean Road on the south coast was a spectacular experience, and we're taking the group there. Of course, seeing a koala and a kangaroo, in the wild, we're going to make a pass at that. And if we miss that, we're going to go see one at the zoo. But, you got to see one of those guys while you're there. A huge highlight. The Great Barrier Reef, nothing could have ever prepared me for that. And seeing that, not only snorkeling and diving the reef, which is an option on our trips, but also seeing it from the air in a helicopter, which is also an option on the trips. It was just spectacular. The colors and the different species of fish and everything. It's really incredible. And since I'm in Australia, I guess my mind's in Australia, there's a certain solace at Uluru, the big rock in the center of the desert. You're 1,000 feet off the desert floor. They say 90% of it's under the desert floor. It'll take you a couple hours to walk around. And when I was there, it was a real privilege to get to spend some time with the Aborigine people that are there, because they find the rock is a sacred space. And the national park system in Australia, I think it's really amazing. They've given that park back to the native folks there. And so they were very particular about what I could or could not photograph, which I was elated to have the opportunity to speak with them personally and find out what their concerns were. And it was a really unique opportunity. So on our trips, we're also going to arrange a few cultural opportunities as well as they come up. In New Zealand, Milford Sound is, I don't know. It could be at the very top of my list as far as one of the most spectacular places to sit there and see a mountain come 6,000 vertical feet out of a glacial carved fjord. And there's a waterfall that hangs in the valley that's 3 times higher than Niagara Falls. And it's just an Eden. It really is incredible, stunning. I mean, just literally breathtaking, stunning location. New Zealand is the adventure capital of the world, so I did a really cool rafting trip last time I was there and actually went through a tunnel that was carved out by gold miners to reroute the river to try to get some gold out of the rapids, which had a crazy story, which was a big highlight, and is an option on one of our trips. So around every corner in New Zealand, there's definitely a highlight. And then over in Africa, a personal highlight would be, Africa is just around every corner. There's something going on. There's something. Seeing the leopards in the tree are probably the top of my list because they're so hard to find. And then when you find one, and it's just lounged out in the tree, and you see it's in its domain, it's in its territory. And so that's really amazing. Of course, I talked about the elephants in front of Kilimanjaro, which is a moment that I'll never forget in my entire life. But then just other kind of shocking things that will happen, and you'll see, as a visual artist, this may sound really odd for me to say, but in Africa, something that's just burnt in my brain is the sounds, all the different sounds that are coming out of these animals. And you may have seen the documentaries, and you may have seen the photographs, and you may know a lot about it, but when you see it in person and then hear those sounds to back up that experience and the smells, and it's really amazing. And then Cuba, wow, a bustling culture of friendly people that are so ready for something new and so excited about the present moment. I've never been around a people who were more excited about now. I've got a new piece at the gallery I call Cuba Now, because this is the time. And I'm telling people that, come with us and see Cuba because it's a time capsule. It's going to change. I'm not saying for the better or for the worse, but it inevitably, change is on the way. And right now it's this time capsule of humble people, welcoming people, 1940s and 50s cars everywhere. And then on the backdrop of, I wasn't prepared for the colonial architecture. I was prepared in my mind for the classic cars, but the colonial architecture, just off the charts, and such a contrast with the cars and the people, and I don't know, just a really beautiful culture that I'm really impressed with and can't wait to get back to.
Benjamin, you might be a fine art photographer, but you're doing a wonderful job of painting a great picture in here of what everybody can imagine in their mind, want to go on these trips with you. It sounds fantastic. Mm-hmm. We're coming near the end of the show, so I want to ask you a couple things. Yes. And I mentioned this at the beginning. In your bio, it talks about your results-oriented environmentalist and community advocate. What can you tell us a little bit more about results-oriented environmentalist?
Yeah, well, I don't want to just capture photographs of the natural world. I want to share them with people and inspire people. I truly believe that people that have an emotional connection to a subject, whether it's a wild animal or a landscape, it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, for them to make a harmful decision from an environmental standpoint. The results-oriented is I don't want to just be an inspiration piece, but I want to try to influence and results. I mean, I want to measurably influence the people that make decisions, the policymakers, and I've done that. I've met with many different politicians. I have many politicians that are collectors of my artwork. And the other thing is, money talks, and we're a small company, but we've contributed about $300,000 not through writing checks. We're not a big company that can write checks at this stage, but through donations of my artwork or through in-kind donations or through some form of contribution to different local charities and to different environmental charities such as the Friends of the Smokies and the Grandfather Mountain Stewardship Foundation are our two biggest environmental charities right now. But just like I was telling you earlier, I just see it as the tip of the iceberg. So I want to take my businesses, my art, I want to take this travel company to the next level so that at a stage we can start significantly contributing to the organizations that support these wild populations. Another very important thing for me is from a travel standpoint, go and see it. If you love tigers, go to India and see the tigers. If you love the elephants, go to East Africa and see the elephants, because you're financially motivating people to keep that wild population alive. And if you stop at the zoo or whatever, that's fine. But if you see a wild population, you're paying a lodge service, a guide service, somebody that's on the ground. So I might not know if a leopard was poached this morning in East Africa, but the guides that I hire know that, and they know that their livelihood is dependent on keeping that wild population around, and they're financially motivated to do so. So I'm a big believer in ecotourism, obviously, and I think that that's part of it. So you roll all of that together, and like I said, it's just the tip of the iceberg with regards to my own personal ambitions and what I want to do from an environmental standpoint, but I think I've got a fair start on it, and I'm proud of what we've been able to accomplish so far.
It's very impressive, Benjamin, and as we wrap up the show here, I can't say how much I appreciate everything you do. It's very impressive. Let's share with the listeners where everyone, you've shared it already, but where everyone can learn about these amazing trips.
Yes, absolutely. You can see my artwork at the Benjamin Walls Gallery in downtown Bristol and also learn about our trips there. You can see more of my artwork online at benjaminwalls.com, and you can see all about the trips, which is what I'm so jazzed about today, at WALLSabout.com. That's WALLSabout.com.
All right, Benjamin, as we wrap up the Neighborhood Well, would you like to share a quote or a thought with everyone?
Yeah, I had a quote that kind of hit me like a ton of bricks the other day, and it kind of goes along with what we were just talking about with the environment. F. Scott Fitzgerald once said, "Genius is the ability to put into effect that which is in your mind. There is no other definition of it." And I'm certainly not a genius, but that is something to aspire to put into effect that which is in your mind. So if you have a big vision, whether it's artwork or a new company, exposing people to the natural world, those are my visions, and putting that into effect is my mission, and so that's what I'm all about.
I love it. Thank you again, Benjamin. It's been a pleasure. And thank you for listening to The Neighborhood Well. This is your host, Paul Gadola, reminding you that you deserve more love, not less.